So, welcome to today's webinar. The topic today is using environmental vitality to transform your inner well-being. We have Greishen Rodriguez here, Jennifer Johnson, and myself. Originally, this was going to be a conversation between Alexandra James Kochi and Jennifer Johnson, but unfortunately, she's not feeling well today. Jennifer, I think that your physical vitality, you said you're not feeling 100%, but I'm really glad that you can join us today because I think that this is just a really awesome conversation. I think it's important to always recognize how much our environment and the world around us is constantly affecting our inner well-being. So I am the marketing and communications coordinator at Be Strong's Families, and I am joined today by these two, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Well, welcome. Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. My name is Greishen Rodriguez. I am the Child Welfare Program Manager here at Be Strong Families, and I look forward to having conversations about my environment space.
Thank you, Greishen. And I'm Jennifer Johnson, and I am Executive Assistant to the Director of Training and Chief Program Officer, Alex, who's not here today. And so thank you so much, Andrew and Greishen, for joining me to make this conversation nice and robust. And I look forward to hearing from all of you as well out there in the audience.
It's always a pleasure, Jennifer. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. I really enjoy when we get like 3 to 4 people on the webinar and, just bounce ideas and thoughts off of each other and keep the conversation flowing.
And we love hearing from you all, so don't be shy to raise your hand. All right, ready for our first question?
Not yet, because first we have to go over the tools for today. And we have one tool for today, which is environmental vitality. And that is about how our surroundings influence our well-being. So questions in this domain focus on how your home and neighborhood mirror your vitality and values. These questions can be found in our Journey to Vitality Café. I'm going to post a link for that, or you could use the QR code that's in the bottom left corner.
And I just because I just learned about QR codes recently, in case you don't know, you can just open your phone's camera and put it at the QR code and a link comes up, then you press on it to learn more.
I learned a lot about QR codes when I first started going back to restaurants after the pandemic. They're like, we have no physical menus anymore. QR codes is the only way you can.
Yeah, right. It has really been really great to actually do that because you don't have to touch the menus. Less germs.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right. So we have a couple questions today. And again, feel free to raise your hands and we can unmute you and have you join us. Or just type your comments in the chat. The first question that we have is share a story about sacred space. So I'm going to post this in the chat and then we can answer this question as we wait for some people to raise their hands or to comment in the chat.
All right, sacred space.
I'm thinking about this. I don't know. I feel like I created a lot of sacred space once the pandemic began. Just kind of thinking about the rituals that I started taking for myself on a daily basis to get some sense of just like, I don't know if I would describe it as normalcy, but just like reacting to the world around me and making it feel less surreal. So I remember always going on walks with my wife, Michelle. And for us, a sacred space was just this area next to her apartment. It was a cemetery. And I just remember constantly, walking there, just walking through the paths. So it's a very beautiful Catholic cemetery. And we would just have these conversations about, what we were seeing around us. This was a time when she was seeing the realities of the pandemic and the lockdown on a daily basis in her hospital. So for me, that became a very sacred space just because of the action of walking through it almost on a daily basis and having those conversations. And for me, it's one of those places where we've talked about, like eventually we want to bring our, future children to like that area, not necessarily the cemetery. Like there's a lake and there's other pathways, but I think, especially on spring, like late spring, I always get a sense of calm going back there and just thinking about the conversations that took place.
Yeah. Thank you, Angie, for sharing. For me, sacred space is a little different. So yesterday, you know, it was Easter. I celebrate Easter, and I was really excited to see a lot of family. So I think my sacred space is where my family is at and my friends. So that's kind of like home, and that's really sacred. Obviously, sometimes I do need to recharge and I come back to my home. My home is a sacred space, but I think my sacred space is being around people. And I really enjoy being around my parents, my friends, and people around. Like, it was just really nice to actually see the kids playing, somewhat like I was creating a new norm, and people just, it was just very enjoyable and very delightful to see. So especially to see my daughter like running around searching for Easter eggs, and she came up with some money. So I was, she's pretty excited. She's excited to go into the store to go some shopping. So that's my sacred space. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Greishen. And Kimberly says, my sacred space is when I am painting, listening to music. Thank you, Kimberly. It's interesting to think about like a sacred space, like the physical space, and the sacred space that is created by, like you say, Greishen, being with family and friends, or like Kimberly says, painting and listening to music. And I can relate to that, like a sacred space. Like when I'm out, I also feel fully alive, like when I'm with people, when I'm with friends, when we're having good conversation, and I feel like a great connection. And when I feel that connection, I feel like it's really sacred. And at the same time, when I'm not with anyone and I'm out in nature, experiencing something like awesome, like beautiful, and like a mountain or stars, I also feel like that's a sacred space, but not for like the space, but for the feeling of connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like I almost would like put these like sacred spaces into two separate categories for myself. One is the sacred space that I share with other people, like the active, like, like part where we're in that space together. And then that kind of thing where it's yourself and you feel more connected to the environment around you instead of necessarily to a person who's sharing your experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all depends how people define it. For me, I define it in so many different ways. So it could go a lot of ways for this one. Also, like when I'm like meditating, that's a sacred space. I got to make sure my surroundings is pretty clear. There is no mess, because then if I open my eyes, it just interrupts my peace where I'm trying to go at. So I have to reassure my space is cleared out, so that space can be sacred for what I'm about to do, which is, meditation. And sometimes it comes along with a prayer. So I got to make sure my space is pretty clear and clean. And when I open my eyes, it's not going to disturb that peace I'm trying to create in my mind. So that's really, really important too.
Have you, this isn't too much of a tangent, I hope, but have you ever been in somebody else's sacred space? Like it was just an environment for you, but you could tell that it was something that was very important to them. I'm kind of thinking about, yeah.
I have it, obviously, I have, and on the religion side, and also in people's homes, depending if they invite me somewhere, this is where I really go to like decompress, to like recharge, to just think. I've been to those spaces with people that have trusted me. So I really like when they have shared that space with me, I value them so much more, because they let me in. They let me in their sacred space. That's something very sacred to them. They're actually, exposing something. So I think to me, it's really important when they share, and then also creates like a deeper intimacy level. So it makes our relationship deeper and more intense and beautiful. So I really appreciate someone who does that.
Yeah, I love the way that you're just responding to that question, because I'm thinking about how relationships, friendships, relationships, everything like that goes deeper when that person and you share those physical spaces or sacred spaces with one another. I'm kind of thinking about like when Michelle and I first started dating, like the places we would go. Just like I remember I really liked this conservatory here in the Twin Cities. It was immediately like, oh, I want to bring her there. Or, and then the vice versa, of just like once we started to become official and everything like that, I remember her inviting me to the Cathedral of St. Paul, which I had never been in before. And I think my relationship to that building today is different because of that first time that I was in that building because she was inviting me to go there and to just sit with her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing when people share their spaces with us. Yeah.
And it's really showing how our environment and our environmental vitality, like once again, the domains of vitality are so interconnected, because it's really like, your social vitality and your spiritual vitality, your connection with other people.
Yeah. They bounce off each other all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, anytime I have these conversations about the vitalities, it's just like, all right, I am not going to be able to stick to just one vitality. Eventually, this physical vitality is going to go into social, eventually that's going to go into just a whole bunch of other ones.
All right, we've got a couple of comments. Marilyn says, my sacred space is my home and being around my children and gardening. And Lydia says, at times when I feel anxiety, walking out in the country near my parents' house in solitude facilitates peaceful and sometimes joyful times of processing and prayer.
Thank you for sharing that, Lydia.
Yeah, thank you both. Yeah, just that peace, environmental peace, your surroundings brings peace of mind and helps with clarity and thought processes and all those things.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing. Shall we go to the next question?
Yeah. So our next question is, what is important to you about your environment? I'm going to post that in the chat.
Okay. That's a great one. To me, like I just shared earlier, it needs to be clean and organized. It has to be clean. In my home, obviously, so I spent a lot this weekend. I actually spent Saturday evening cleaning out my daughter's room and also cleaning out my, because I already knew that yesterday was going to be busy with, celebrating my holiday, right? And then, obviously I had to make sure when I came home, my room was clean, the kitchen was clean, everything else was clean. So like that, when I came, I had to just do my night routine and I was just relaxed. To me, it has to make sure that my home is clean. Yeah, I really appreciate that a lot when I do that. So I give myself all the times a pat in the back.
That's awesome. I'm feeling a little jealous because I was outside this weekend, did not work on that. And I definitely feel the impacts. Like I'm looking at my desk and I did not do that. And I do like to do that as well. Looks like Kimberly says, I agree. I like clean and organized. I don't like losing anything. And LaJuan, I agree, clean and organized. Yeah, I think there's something about that is really, and even when you walk out of that room or out of your house, you carry that. I carry that mental load, that disorganization, those things that I have to come back to with me. So I know that when I spend time like you did, Greishen, on my house, I wish I had done that this weekend because I'm feeling a little bit of repercussion from not taking care of my environment in my house this weekend.
Yeah. It's really great to actually have it clean and stuff like that. When I'm thinking outside of my home and like extended, like my community, I like my community to also be clean and organized. So if I see things done, like if I could pick it up, I pick it up. Like if it's, in front of my house and it's garbage, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pick it up because it's actually, this is where I live. It's in front of me and I'm seeing it when I'm walking outside. So I'm also doing those due diligence that I need to do for my community and that aspect of it.
I love that.
Yeah, I think great point.
It all starts on the individual level and then just consistently grows, individual, the community, a city, everything like that.
Yes.
I do it because I have a 10-year-old that is observing me. So I want her to make sure that she has to take care not just of her home, but also her community, which her community is outside. So, hey, I'm modeling this. I'm not telling her to do it. I'm just modeling. So she's observing. So someday she's going to follow that. So I'm hoping that's the hope, right? That our children follow that. So I'm hoping that does that. And also coming from I used to live in Chicago and coming from a community that was, sometimes, like, I guess, pretty like intense in a way. Like it was, a lot of, low income and things like that happening. So I come from a community that it was really hard to actually even sit outside on the porch and stuff like that. So I kind of value where I'm at as well. And I also value living in that community as well. I think it taught me a lot of things. And I also keep pouring into those communities. So I still want to go back to those communities and still pour back to, I'm not afraid to live, in those communities, but also it's so important for us to keep pouring to those communities that need it. And by how do I do it? I'm still part of them. I still join things and, community resources, community, whatever's going on in the community. I still go back and return and, do the things that it needs to be done for that community. So I continue to serve them because I think it's really important.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We have a couple comments in the chat. We have one from Rebecca saying, welcoming, comfortable, but my brain works better when it's neat and organized. And Lydia says, relational peace with people around me in my environment. I guess for myself, thinking about this question, I think it's very important to me for my environment that the people who come in and see that environment or share that environment with me feel comfortable doing so. So like, I'm just thinking of like, I have a friend who is moving out of the Twin Cities, I think later this year. And anytime he comes over to our house, he says it feels like kind of like an oasis away from a lot of other stress. And I'm very happy to hear that. And so like when he comes over, I, try and make sure that, I'm being a good host and everything like that. But also like this is like a very concrete example because like last year we had the wall painted, like the wall that was like from the opening hallway all the way across the living room. So it was like 40 feet. And it turns out the paint was not good quality. So it started peeling and everything like that. And I could just notice like whenever Michelle came home and like from a long shift, those 12-hour shifts, and then she would look up and see the peeling paint, it would just like be even more draining. So it's one of those things of like wanting to fix that in order that she feels like she's coming home to a space that she can be proud of. So I think, it's important to me that other people feel safe in that environment.
Yeah, I never thought about it, how you could offer security in that aspect. Now I'm processing what you just said. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Marilyn says, being at peace with people around me. And Cheyenne says, healthy, safe, and enjoyable environment. Yeah. For me, I'm thinking about like what Andrew was saying about the paint, and we moved into our first like home almost a year ago, and there were so many things that I thought we were going to do right away, and we haven't done like 99% of those things yet. But coming to the realization that I want to put, while our kids are still little, I have 2 small children, we have 2 cats, a dog, so things like get trashed in this house. And so without letting them get so trashed that it's unsafe or really bad, because I still, aesthetics are important for me too, but only to a certain extent, because right now at this point in my life, I'm realizing like, okay, I'd rather go spend 2 hours playing outside with my kids than have my kids like do something else while I fix the sink in the bathroom so that it looks nicer or something like that. So we're waiting a little bit, and just the realization that you can't have it all, but that our environment does impact. So making it as nice as we can without spending so much time, energy, and money that we're taking away from the really important parts of life that we don't want to miss.
There's definitely an overlap, I think, with like your environment with financial vitality.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, for myself, my environmental vitality used to be tied to 3 other roommates, and so like there was a certain amount of vitality that I could do. I remember, like I think this is back in 2017, I was unemployed, and immediately I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna fill my time with something. So I started doing the environmental vitality of trying to keep the kitchen clean and stuff like that. It is, let me tell you, with 20-something, like at the age of 20-something, 4 men in a house, that's a losing battle. So
Yes, sounds like my children.
yeah. And it's one of those things where, like even now of just like, Michelle and I were able to get a house, and we were very excited about that. But it's also one of those things of like getting a house now is a lot different than maybe getting a house in your 50s or 60s or something like that, where you can like buy the house and then maybe have some leftover funds to start projects around the house. There is like, I'm very like, I want to recognize how blessed I am to have this house, but it's also one of those things of like buying a house and being like, please nothing break, because I can't, I can't right
Yes.
now.
Oh yes, our washing machine just took its last breaths on Saturday, so I feel you on that one. Surprise. This month's budget is gone, but you know what? Our clean clothes are part of our environmental vitality, so we're gonna go ahead and fix that one soon.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you can raise your hand and share what's important to you. You can answer our questions if you would like to join by raising your hand or in the chat.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I think that's a good time to go to our next question. Are we ready for it?
Yes.
All right. So this question is, what does your home environment say about who you are and what you value?
Yeah, thinking about kind of what I just said about not quote unquote fixing or updating or renovating certain parts of our house. Because of our kid, we want to make it very kid friendly, and there's things for the kids to do. So I want to recognize for myself, like there's still parts of my house that I want to be able to go to where my kids can come too, but that I want to be a little bit less chaotic, so that I can, have that peace of mind, be able to think a little bit clearly. And then there might be other parts that I just need to say, like this area, we're going to have bright colored Legos. We're going to have some more plastic than I would like. Because I really like natural things, wooden things, softer colors. But then when you have kids, for me, at least, it's a lot harder because, there's a lot out there for kids that is bright and hard and, shiny and makes noise. So we are conscious of like not bringing too much of that into the house, but we also want to, let our kids like pick out a toy once in a while that maybe I wouldn't have picked out. So in our house, I noticed that it doesn't scream like this is who I am, but it might say like this is the stage in life I'm at right now, and I'm good with that.
Yeah, for me, I think for mine, I don't know if it says something about me, but I think what's inside I value tremendously, which is my child and myself. I think that speaks so loudly. So when we go out there, so if someone comes into my house, they could see that I love my daughter the most, because there's pictures of her everywhere, literally in the living room, in the kitchen, in her own room as well. So I think that's, you'll see that, and people are able to recognize that. Even entering in my social media, if we're talking about that kind of platform as well, that that's a little piece of me, of my home in that aspect of it. So I think they could say that I really love family and I love my child tremendously. And besides like the material portion of it, I don't like to clutter a lot of things. If I know, okay, hey, you might use this in 2 years, okay, just throw it away. You know what? It's gonna hold space in the closet. I don't have the space to actually save it for 2 years. Probably by 2 years passes, I don't even remember it's in the closet until I'm actually, probably moving out or digging through the closet. So I, decide to just either donate it, toss it if it's broken or it's not working, not save it. It just keeps my space a little bit less cluttered, and I'm able to fit in whatever I need to fit in. So people are able to recognize that I like, everything like not too much stuff, just simple. And I think a simple life for me and my daughter is really, really wonderful. It's just, and I really appreciate that portion, that part of my home and extended home.
Thank you. And Elaine says, I agree. Rebecca says, totally agree, Gresham. I am trying to incorporate all of that into getting rid of excess here. And also Rebecca earlier said, family is important to me. Pictures, my faith, wall hanging sayings, but I have trouble letting go of stuff and staying organized. Yeah,
It's
stuff.
yeah, and now that letting go of stuff is really hard. You go through a grief on certain things. I'm like, oh, I'm grieving this portion, but I really need the space for this. So I really go through grief sometimes, but I let myself process it. Is this really important to me? It's a sacred for me. So like, if it's so sacred for me, I'm gonna keep it and just make it work, but if it's something that is broken and it's not fixable, or it's like just holding up space, like a table that is broken, I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to toss it. But things that are sacred with me, I put it away. I save it. I don't, I also try not to put myself in a predicament that I'm, going to be like hurting because I let it go. So unless it's, pictures and stuff like that, I love pictures. Not everything's like actually electronic, but I like physical pictures. So I like to print them. And they're actually in a bin, and I like, going to see them, and I show my daughter and stuff like that. And that's the way I also create quality time for us. So I really appreciate that.
Nice. Cheyenne said, so, and please, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. The space surrounding for each person's zone is very important for me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Cheyenne, I was going to ask her if she could tell us a little bit more about that. That would be great. Like, I'm trying to understand your comment a little bit more.
Raise your hand if you would like, or you can type in the chat.
Right.
Oh, good.
There you go.
For me, because I like my own space, okay? I like my own space. For my house, okay, my husband and myself, right? Okay, he has space on his own. I have space my own. Okay, when I work, okay, when I'm come back to work, between my space gonna be my space first. I can, start from come my house, right? I come home from work. I need to get my space first to relax everything. I get ready to from work environment to house environment. So I need to calm myself down, but I can and then kind of like shift from work to the house to the home. I need to my space to I calm, I relax first, and then I can handle what's going on in the house, in the family first. Before I like my own space. I feel safe. I feel free. I can by myself. I know enjoyable. I know I feel like my world I have my own space.
Yeah, I hear you on that. You know what? Thank you for sharing. I grew up with about 9-10 brothers and sisters. So I could relate to your comment. Thank you for sharing. Yes, I understand that. Yes, you do sometimes need your own space and making sure that we're dividing the time. I agree with you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Cheyenne. That resonates with me as well. And when we first moved into this house, and both my husband and I work from home, so we have a room that is an office. We tried to share it, and we do not share it anymore. So I definitely understand having your own space is important.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that now. Of like I had 7 siblings growing up. And it was one of those things where growing up in the country too. So a lot of times we were always in the same area, and there wasn't a lot of, other homes or other areas that you could just go off to get away from that environmental vitality. Not to say that it was a bad, environment or anything like that, but you need a break. And I remember just like going to the point where I was just like, I would bike 30 miles like into and out of the local town just to have time to myself. So it's interesting to think about like how your environmental vitality is so closely tied to your family and loved ones. And I've been thinking about this. I don't know if I have a really good answer to this question. Just I think I also like to have things be clean to a certain degree. I think Michelle would say otherwise because she is much more organized than me. I'll have like this clean area, and then I'll also be like, okay, well, I need something like out disorganized in here. Like I've gotten to the point where I'll like throw like sweatpants underneath the bed to be like, all right, those are not in the drawer. I feel great. um, but I always think of like when we did get married, and like we had a very small wedding because of the pandemic, but people still sent along wedding gifts. And I just remember like moving into her apartment and then just seeing the slow accumulation of stuff everywhere. And it wasn't like we were hoarding, it was just, we were ready to move on to whatever was next. I mean, if we had had a 2-bedroom apartment, I think it actually would have been okay. But it was one of those things of like, I remember, I had started working for Be Strong Families. I was working in the living room and being very like, like Michelle would come home from work and just, she would be watching TV and I would be like in a meeting. And when you're in a meeting and you're trying to like say something to somebody around you, but, so that nobody can see, you mute yourself and then you're like, hey, babe, can you turn that off? Or can you make that lower, the sound?
You're like,
so,
like, excuse me, can you turn that off, please?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of a meandering story, but I'm just thinking about like what I value. I definitely value not seeing a lot of clutter. It's one of those things where like, even like, we got a corgi and he just sheds everywhere. So I try and vacuum like 2 to 3 times a week because I can't with this guy. I can't really have a conversation with him about it either.
Yeah.
The animals contribute and contract your environmental vitality in different ways, for sure. So Lydia says, I have an international interest, maps on walls. Relationships are important to me. Most items around have a story of someone who gave me that piece of furniture or decor. And my faith in God is central for me as well. Cross on wall, prayer requests on the fridge, etc. Yes.
Yeah, I have a lot of those pieces too around my house that have been gifted to me. I cannot get rid of those because some type of it's sacred obviously as well, but it just keeps me close to the person in somehow, some way, especially if they're no longer here, longer present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we moved across the country, and well, I've had a few big moves, and every time we move, it's like kind of letting go of more things. And most of my personal items or my sentimental items have been pared down every time. And it's interesting, like to see what things make it and what doesn't. And some of the stuff that doesn't, it doesn't mean it wasn't important or that I don't have like a good memory, but it just like the physical thing wasn't necessary for me anymore. But yeah, those things that you keep, that you have, that connect you to a memory or a person, those are important. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing, Lydia and Greishen. And thinking about faith and spirituality, those things that like, it's interesting placing physical items or having a space that kind of gives itself to being able to pray or meditate. I find that, yeah, if my space is a certain way, or if I have a certain item to remind me, it's easier to connect to those things for me.
It gets me thinking, I should probably set some area of my house as like the designated place for me to like pray and read and that kind of stuff, just because I think a lot of times it's probably pros and cons, because I tend to like pray just throughout the day. Maybe I'm washing the dishes and it's just like, dear Lord, very quick, like prayer and everything like that. But I will say that like having like a certain space to just like centralize yourself and get yourself in that zone of just being in that spiritual state can definitely make it a lot more, I don't know, just more of an event as opposed to, of just a quick prayer or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. So I don't know if we read this one yet. Marilyn says, my space is filled with family photos and books. I have a hard time giving away things which loved ones have given me. Thank you for sharing that, Marilyn. Are we ready for the next question?
Yes.
Awesome. So the next question is, what is one thing you could do to the environment in your home that would improve your quality of life?
Oh my God, for that one, you know what, I will like, if I will have to move totally from this apartment so I could add an extra room so my office is separate from my living space. I really, really want that. I want my office and my work totally like, not in my living space. I think sometimes it makes me think, especially when I'm trying to decompress and I see my desk, I'm like, I forgot to send that email or something like that. So I want to space separately. So like that is just work is in that room only and it stays in that room. So it just holds me accountable for myself and creating more boundaries as well. So I will have to move. That's something that I'm willing to do, to actually move to a new space, a bigger space that is just going to be, new, obviously a new start, and, but I want an office. I would like an office. Where I live at, it's quite comfortable. It is really comfortable. We do have our own rooms and things like that, but yeah, an office, so I do have the office available to me, to go, right? But, I want a separate office just in general, so I could work on not just work, just in other things as well, my personal life.
Yeah, there's something about that, just having a separate room to put your professional life in. Because, I did the whole living room thing for the first 8 or 9 months that I worked at Be Strong Families. And I remember it always being one of those things where, get done with work, put down the laptop, and then go sit over in the living room to read a book or watch a movie or something like that. And the physical space is still in your view. So you can see the laptop, you can see the font or some of the paper that you have there, or just even the mouse and that kind of thing, where it's still present. It's still part of your environment, and putting it into something where you can close the door. I think that is something that I've very much been grateful for. I've trying to think of when I moved here. I think it was last May. But it's something of I think it definitely has taken, it's an experience that I'm glad I had. It's something where it's if you don't have that experience, I think it could be very easy to think about working from home and immediately being oh, I'll have an office that does this. But sometimes your environment requires you to, make an amalgamation of wherever you're living, office, living room, that kind of thing. And it's something that I definitely want to keep in mind moving forward, because I don't want to just assume that, if somebody's working online, that they just have their own private space for that office. Maybe they're working and, they've got a child in the same room, that kind of thing. And I want to be respectful.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's important to keep those things in mind. And I feel like all three of us presenters have had a similar experience with that. And it really does help with just understanding where other people are coming from. I remember when I applied for this job at Be Strong Families, I literally was trying to keep my baby asleep on the bed. I was sitting in between the bed and the wall so that if he cried, and I didn't have a space in that place where we were. And so now, even though I don't have my own office, I am very grateful that I have a space that is more dedicated to my professional life, where I can kind of leave it. Rebecca says being able to close the door is important. Yeah. And even if you don't have a physical door to do that, sometimes just having a spot helps for me. And I would also like to be able to close a physical door and not see it, but that will come eventually.
Yeah. For me, I think to improve it a little bit better is buying a new bed, especially that I realize that I have a lot of back problems. I want to buy a new bed. So I'm willing to actually save. So it goes, I guess it, goes with the financial portion as well. But I really want to save so I could purchase a great bed. So like that, I'm able to have, good rest. So especially maybe that will actually help my back. So that will improve also my physical. So, it kind of they all kind of merge together somehow, some way. So yeah, that's how I'm able to improve my quality of life here.
Nothing like a good bed. That is very true. And we have a couple more comments. Rebecca said, let's see, clean and declutter. Sorry, I'm declutter and organize. And Lydia said, yes, same for me, Rebecca. Marilyn says, I need to be more organized and let go of things I no longer need. And LaJuan says, yes, I agree. And then, yeah, so it sounds like we've got a lot of declutter that is important. I feel like that's a theme that we've been talking about a little bit. And then Cheyenne says, nice backyard so I can garden the way I like to.
Yeah, I would love that too. I would like to have a porch, but I don't have a porch. So I have to actually go to the park to do picnic. I wish I did. So that kind of also will be nice to actually just have lunch outside. Hey, I'm gonna have lunch. I'm gonna have it'll be, you know what, I'm gonna take, go outside to, to actually, see the sun or something, not be inside. So I should actually move my whole computer with me since it's a laptop. So that'll be great to actually have a backyard or a porch to actually just sit there and get some fresh air.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
fresh air that's like changing your environment and your inner environment, right? Because you're breathing in the fresh air, and it's not just, it's the sunshine, it's the air. Yeah, that's one thing we're doing. One thing we are changing, like I do have a concrete answer to this question. Actually, we are going to build a little patio this spring and summer so that we can enjoy our outdoor area a little bit. And we're just doing one small project each year, I think, but we're foregoing everything indoors. Like, okay, everything inside is going to stay the same. The carpet's going to stay in the bathroom, and we're going to focus on outside because we want to spend our time out there a little bit more comfortably.
I'll also go with the concrete answer to this, and that is we are going to get the water lines flushed because this is a 40-year-old house, and the people who lived here before spent about 20 years just kind of letting it accumulate. So we had a plumber come over, and they were like, all right, well, you got to get these cleaned. I mean, like you could do it the easy way where it's back to what it is now in 5 years, or you just, go for the full clean. It's like, you know what? I kind of want to do good by whoever lives here in the future, 10 years from now, and they don't have to deal with what I'm dealing with now. So that's going to be the thing that we're going to try and do this summer.
Yeah, we don't always see, it's not always something you can like see with your eyes, right away.
Oh, absolutely. I have a brother who bought a house that was built in 1885, and he kind of bought it and then found out the entire electrical, everything electrical needed to be redone because it was rusting and everything like that. And he's very lucky that he has a brother, not me, I could never do it, but he has a brother who does electrical work. So he was able to take a 15,000 project and get it done for very much less than that.
Well, I have something else to add to, I guess, conclude this question. So another thing, I wouldn't say improve, also maintain, is actually not let, I guess, toxic or bad energy within my home, or like someone with bad energy that I know it's going to actually interrupt my, my peace in my home. So I want to make sure those people stay away, and I set boundaries with those people. They're like, hey, like being respectful, obviously, and giving, this, being humble to actually saying it to them, I cannot welcome you in my home because of this and this and that, or I don't have to just explain it either, and that's okay. Just say no and just moving forward. And that's how I'm able to maintain the life I have right now, that peace I have in my home right now. I think that's really important to keep the space safe for me and my daughter.
Thank you for sharing that, Greishen. And I think we have one final question. So that question is going to be, find the screen share button, but where do you go for peace? So I think this could be inside your own home if there's a specific room, or just getting outside of wherever you live. Where do you go for peace?
A great question. There's so many places I'm thinking, and especially that COVID hit, right? The pandemic hit and stuff like that. It was not a lot of places that I could go to. So where I went to was books. I started reading books and starting like doing my own like kind of book club here by myself. So I kind of started reading, and I think I went into that world, and that's how I found peace, while learning, or I just did it for fun and things like that. So that's how I did it. And if I was to actually say it, I guess, there's a park near me, like 10 minutes away. I like to go to that park, especially when it's warm, just, to get some fresh air, to take the walk and just enjoy the nature, the trees and things like that, the flowers. So I really appreciate that greatly.
Thank you.
Thinking about this
Got a
question.
couple of comments. Rebecca says, if I get the chance, I like to go to the ocean. And Lydia says, reading as far as a mental place and nature for physical space. Yeah. Again, we see like the different types of environment, our mental environment, our physical environment. I also like to go to the ocean. When I lived in California, I really liked to, it was like 35 minutes to one of my favorite places in the world. And the Northern California coast is like rough, but so beautiful. And that would, and just the, the moving water. And I think next to any body of water, I think like as humans, that seems to be like really peaceful for us. But then I have that answer. And then I also think like, where do I go for peace? I go to the bathroom and I shut the door, or I go in a closet with my snacks, or whatever, because I also need peace, like in the moment right now. Okay, my kids are screaming or they're playing on their own. I have a moment. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go out the front door and shut the door and feel the sunshine for 2 minutes while I can be alone, or I'm going to go sit in my car. And those are not like as romantic as the ocean and other places in nature I love to go, but sometimes that's not possible.
It's more real. I think a lot of people just can definitely relate with the idea of just like needing to get into the car,
Yeah.
Just, I mean, like even like having this, I just think of like, I used to have a job where I would, drive 10 minutes to work and drive back home. And there's something about, before you set out, just like taking a little bit of time to just take a minute and just like get yourself mentally prepped for the day. I don't know. I think there's something to be said about like going to peace. I think the active process of going to that place of peace, there's something very big there. Like one of my favorite, I grew up 10 miles from Lake Superior up in northern Wisconsin. And I love Lake Superior, but sometimes it's much more like mentally uplifting to be in the process of going there, knowing that I'm going to one of my favorite spaces.
Yeah.
Like looking forward to it, anticipation.
We have a couple comments. Yeah.
Go ahead, Greishen.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Rebecca says, oh, yes to reading.
And we have a couple more below.
Cheyenne says, warm shower and soft music in the house. Yes, I do that as well when I really need to like shock my body out of some stress. Like, okay, water, warm water, music, make a little oasis. Marilyn says, my daughter's home. She is so organized, and being around her fills me with peace and ideas of how to make my own space better. Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. That's what I love about these conversations and cafes. We're sharing, hearing the stories, sharing our story, hearing other people's story. And I feel so energized right now to make my environment, like to clean and organize. Like even if I just do it for 2 minutes after this webinar, because we're sharing this, I feel like, yeah, we get those ideas and we get the energy. It's really helpful. And Cheyenne also says, island in Thailand with my family. Ooh, can I go too?
Take us all.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome. I think that puts a great cap to our conversations today, unless anybody has anything else to add. If you want to raise your hand, I can definitely unmute you. But I think, are we ready for the closing slides?
Yeah, and thank you to everybody who has shared. It's been really insightful. We love hearing your answers to these questions.
Absolutely. So today we are going to amplify inner well-being. We always want to amplify one thing from each webinar. I really, really enjoyed the conversations today and just being able to learn from both my co-hosts and the people in the comments, as well as just reflecting on, I don't know, I really enjoy talking through my thoughts because it's like, oh, did not think of it that way before. But amplify inner well-being. If you have another amplify that you want to share, please share it in the chat. And with this whole vitality conversation, we want to invite you to join us as we spring into vitality. So through now, so it's been going since March, but from now through June, join us for a variety of fun events that will bring us together in focus of community, wellness, and growth. Next month is going to be all about spiritual vitality. And I'm really excited to talk about that because I feel like we talked about environmental vitality today, but I feel like there was a lot of conversation that intersected with spiritual vitality. So I'm going to drop the link to this Spring Into Vitality event on the Be Strong Families website. Jennifer Johnson says, amplify, declutter space and thoughts. Thank you, Jennifer. And I want to invite everyone to join us for a Taste of Vitality Cafe, Inside Out. This is going to be around physical vitality and will be taking place on Friday, April 22nd. And you can see conversations using questions from the Journey to Vitality Cafe in a deck. Obviously, the conversations are going to look a little bit different in terms of format and style than today's webinar, but I think the sense of community and the sense of coming together in conversation is always present in Be Strong Families conversations. So I'm going to drop the link to that. And then join us for future webinars. We have English and Spanish webinars, and our series is Staying Strong and Positive for Ourselves and Our Children. Those are going to always take place at 12 o'clock p.m. Central Time for Spanish and English, and then Tuesday, Thursday for Spanish. So I'm going to drop the link for that. We'd love to see you for more webinars. And then finally, join our webinar community, or our webinar community on YouTube. We have a lot of people who go back and watch all of our YouTube videos. Everything that we talk about in these webinars are being live streamed to YouTube and are always available for people to go back to. So I'm going to drop the link to that in the chat. And I think that's it. Do you have anything else to add, Jennifer or Greishen?
No, thank you everyone for joining. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. And we got a couple more hashtags, amplify hashtags. Lydia says amplify environmental agency. Rebecca amplified declutter. Yeah, thank you everyone. It's been a great conversation. Hope you have a wonderful